Okay, so let's get started. In this video, we're just going to start off in the midsection here and we're going to work on something very simple to ease you into this, and that's going to be our sci-fi shirt. So we're just going to take our time and get you started with working with smart materials and how you can look into smart materials and change the anatomy to modify them to your own. So we're going to take it pretty easy here. So first thing we're going to do, I'm going to turn off transparency, and if you want you can turn off all the maps since we're working on the midsection, but just make sure you click on the right texture set list before you begin. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create two things. I'm going to create a fill layer and I'm going to create a folder. Now the reason I'm creating a folder is because there might come a point where I'm going to have multiple fill layers and I don't want to have to keep adding masks upon masks on each fill layer. So one way that's very easy to kind of compensate that is to sort of have a folder so that it can mask all those fill layers out. That way I don't have to worry about going through each and every single fill layer and always designating the same spot. Having said that, we'll still have to make small customized adjustments by creating masks in certain areas, but this is going to help us to stay organized. So as you can see, I made a folder, I made a fill layer. I am now going to go ahead and just double click on that and rename that shirt, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to simply use this fill layer as, I'm not really going to name it anything. I can just name it test. And it's just going to help me to designate my test fill layer like so. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag and drop that in there. And you'll notice that nothing really changes except I can open and collapse it. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a black mask. I'm going to right click on there, add black mask, so I can put a mask and cover up everything. Now I'm going to go ahead and select that mask on left click, and I'm just going to go to polygon fill, and then I'm going to go over to where it says properties, and I'm going to choose my polygon fill. Make sure my value is set to white so it sees through, and that's what I'm basically using the test for, just to help me get a little bit of a spot that I can kind of know that I've correctly adjusted and designated that properly. So now that that's done, now that I have my fill mask created, this is going to be something that's very basic and very common to do. I'm going to now do some experimenting. So I want you to be in an exploratory state when you do this, because the more you do this, the more you're going to understand more and more about how to work the smart materials and how to pick and choose certain aspects of smart materials to manipulate. So I'll give you an example. For this shirt, I'm going to, after doing some testing, one thing I found I liked was that I liked the under smart materials, a fabric stretchy sci-fi material, and I'm going to start with that. And that kind of gives us sort of our default look. And honestly, I'm almost happy with it, but I may want to make some adjustments here, and it gives me an opportunity to learn about the anatomy of a smart material, and that's a very important thing. That's why it's so important to experiment. And as I've said before, one of the most common ways to change, one of the most easiest parameter to change in a smart material that they all have in common is color, and color is typically the bottom most fill layer within the folder of a smart material. So I'm going to go ahead and mess around with that and change that out right now. You can kind of see, you can just kind of pick a color that you like right there. Now feel free to kind of turn off the visibility on and off, just so you can kind of learn to see what everything is. You might even like this if you want, where it's kind of predominant like that. That's kind of cool, but I kind of like that way. So now that I got that, I'm just going to go ahead and just make one more adjustment in this fill layer, and it's probably going to be just add a little collar trim, or maybe I'll add, maybe just some simple collar trim. So what I'll do is instead of using the smart material, I'm going to delete my test. I'm just going to add another fill layer. And I'm just going to call that color trim. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and change that to maybe a darker tone color. And I really don't need any roughness, but actually I'll take the roughness off because I don't want it to mess with the roughness of my smart material. So I'm turning off all channels, and I'm just going to, for now, focus on color. So I still have some things I got to do before. What I want to do is I want to use this color trim fill layer just to kind of occlude and cover up, to have sort of like an outline of an area right up here, and the same thing down here, just to give myself a sense of a trim to this. So first thing I got to do is I got to set it up for it to be workable. And to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and first I'm going to add a black mask to it. Then I'm going to just paint just a little streak to test it out. And then I'm looking at this, it looks pretty good, but I see that it's a little bit, it's kind of just going right through the material. So I need to find a way to cover it up a little bit, or find a way for this fill layer to cover over it, because right now it's just blending with it. So I'll just go ahead and maybe choose a little bit of a darker material, and then I'll go ahead and work with height. And I'm just going to mess around. I'm turning the height channel back on. I'm just going to go ahead and give that a sense of a little bit of a depth. And then I'm going to go through the height channel again up here. And I'm going to see that it's being blended, so I'm going to turn that to normal. By doing that, going through normal, then it is therefore going from no longer in its previous blending mode. It is being taken off, and now it's just a normal blend mode. If you kind of look at the sides, you kind of see the roughness is still blending with the previous smart material. So let's go into roughness now, and let's do the same thing. Let's just go ahead and hit normal. Now nothing's going to change because we don't have a normal roughness map painted in. So let's enable that channel. So now we got something that's covering up. Now we can go ahead and just kind of, now that we've set up our fill layer, let's just add a black mask. So now what we can do is I'm going to switch between black and white, and I can either do this in two ways. I can paint along here like so. This is what I love the most about the fill layer approach, because I can just kind of go on here. Maybe I want to make this a little bit stronger of a height map. Maybe I want to see that color trim contrast a little bit better, so I'll just make that completely black. And let's see, just kind of dealing with editing things on the fly, you know. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. You know, all I'm doing is just painting through the mask on what this is. I'm just sort of doing some editing. Now, it might be a little bit difficult to do down here. Just remember, you have a couple of steps you can do. Like we did in the previous one, the previous section, or the beginner section, we can isolate select this and start just painting around it. But one thing we didn't really do was, and I find this easier, is we could just simply kind of go through and just kind of paint out something like that. Try that again. That's a little bit easier. Another thing that we can do is we can hold left command and right click button, and that will, and just kind of go up and down with the mouse, and you can kind of adjust your smoothness. If you hit the right mouse button, you can also bring up your brush settings. So if you don't want to go over here, we can change that space down. So that's a little bit easier. I'm going to hit X again to swap out my roughness value. And I'm just kind of holding shift to draw that marquee line. That might be a little bit too much, so I'm just going to pick my you can kind of see it's just a little bit of a take your time. Essentially. And just bring this all around like so. You can kind of see we kind of got through that pretty quick for the shirt. Now, a little warning. It's not all like that, you know. Dragging and dropping a material is always kind of nice, but there might be scenarios where you might need to combine a little bit more of work around on it, and we're going to kind of go with that demonstration down the road. Like, for example, when we do the main jacket fabric, we'll show you some tricks that will involve more anatomy carving of the smart material. So there we go. We got ourselves a little bit of a shirt. Now remember, this is why I like fill layers so much. It's not just colors, or I'm sorry, it's not just the fact that it's a non-destructive workflow. It's also that you can really go back and manipulate colors and do a lot of experimentation for color theory and things like that. That's always a nice thing to have available for you. But we'll just be kind of building off of this concept. This is a base, easy mode, just starting off real easy to get you started. Down the road, coming up, we're going to be working on this whole jacket here and taking a few different approaches. So with that said, stick around and stay tuned.